I'm Sky, and I'm 30 years old. I want to tell the story of something that happened in my past that I don't like to talk about. Sometimes life brings unexpected surprises that change everything. And these surprises are not always good. I never thought that I would have to live with such a horrible memory, and I still find it hard to accept that it happened. While many people tell stories of love and happiness, that's not my case at all. Others may think that love is why people get married, but in the case of my stepfather and mother, that was untrue right from the start. I knew that something was wrong from the very beginning. I was the real reason he married her. My dad passed away when I was a little girl, and my mom, Peggy, owned a beauty supply store. It was a very popular place in our community. Mom worked hard, and I did my best to get good grades in school. She raised me well, and before I knew it, I had graduated, and it was time to go to college. I had gotten quite a few scholarships and grants because of my good grades and playing softball in high school. I had always been interested in cartoons, so I decided to take up animation. The years flew by, and I graduated from college and landed an animation job at a small media company. That's how I met Mr. Harris. He was my boss. A lot of times, he would ask me to work overtime so we could meet the deadlines for the projects we were working on. Also, since I was new, I figured it was so I can get the hang of everything. But then I started to notice something strange. He would gaze at me with a certain look in his eyes. At first, I thought I was just imagining things. But then as time went on, his gaze became more intense, like he was thinking about more than just work. It was intimate and had a silent meaning to it. I started feeling uncomfortable and confused every time I saw it. This was because it wasn't a normal look like a boss should have. It felt like he was examining me. I still tried to hold on to the idea that it was just my imagination, that is, until I started to notice other strange actions. He began standing and sitting closer to me and putting his hands on my shoulders in a way that made me feel uneasy. At first, the gestures seemed harmless, but as he kept doing them, I got more and more uncomfortable around him. Then one afternoon, when he asked me to work late, it didn't seem like the other times that I did this. It felt like he was just prolonging the time I was there. Every time I did a task and everything was good, he would pinpoint some other little detail that was not necessary so I could stay longer. Then the gaze and gestures came along, which made me feel nervous. I didn't feel respected by him. After that, it got to the point where I had to begin making up excuses so I wouldn't have to be around him as much anymore. I told him I could work on some of the projects at home, and he agreed that it was fine. When I was at work and he would ask if I needed any help, I would always tell him no, just to keep my distance from him. I did everything I possibly could to avoid him. I would try to get the seat furthest to the back of the room, and I definitely did my best to limit eye contact with him. Sometimes I even called in late and made up the excuse that I was waiting for a slow train to get by on the tracks. I did anything I could think of to stay away from him. I knew that if I didn't have to deal with that gaze and those gestures of his, my anxiety would go away. As time went on and I kept my distance from him, things seemed like they got better. I thought all of this drama was over, but little did I know it was just a temporary break. I started noticing a difference in my mother. She was happier than usual. I noticed a certain gleam in her eyes, and I would often hear her singing or chuckling to herself. She also seemed more distracted. Like one morning, instead of pouring milk on her cereal, she poured orange juice on it and didn't even realize it until I said something. I felt like she was hiding something from me, something that made her feel happy and special. I began questioning her about things, but all she would say was she was just so happy because everything in her life was getting better. One evening, while we were watching TV, a commercial came on. She grabbed the remote and turned the volume down. Then she came over and sat right next to me. She had joy in her eyes, and her face had a certain glow to it. Then she told me she had something important to share with me. She went on to tell me how she met someone special at the boutique. A nice guy was buying a birthday gift for his sister, and the two of them hit it off immediately. She let me know that she wanted to introduce me to him. Seeing how happy she was made me feel the same way. My mom had raised me alone, sacrificing everything and devoting all her time to me. It felt good to know that she finally had the happiness she deserved. The day came for us to be introduced, and I was looking forward to it. We had cleaned the house from top to bottom and set the dining room table in a fancy way. I could see the excitement written all over her face, and I hoped this man would bring her the happiness she had been longing for all this time. When the doorbell rang, my heart skipped a beat. While my mom went to answer the door, I stayed in the living room, imagining what this man would be like. I imagined what he looked like, what industry he worked in, and his personality. When the man walked inside the living room, I saw that it was Mr. Harris. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was in so much shock that I almost passed out. All of the uncomfortable moments came flooding back through my mind. The man that my mother was in love with and trusted so much was the one I had been avoiding all this time and didn't want to have anything to do with. All kinds of questions filled my mind, with the two main ones being, why him? And what were his intentions? The anxiety I had once before and thought I had gotten rid of came back quickly. I couldn't even think clearly. I looked at my mother to see if she noticed my reaction, but she didn't. She was completely smitten with Mr. Harris. There was a big smile on her face as she introduced us. She was totally unaware that his presence was having an effect on me. Mr. Harris was calm and had a big, friendly smile on his face. He said hi to me and acted like he was so surprised that Peggy was my mother. I tried to play it cool, but on the inside, I was having a fit. Then I told him that all of this was a surprise to me because I didn't know that my boss was dating my mother. My mom did not catch on to the tension in the air and was tickled pink to find out that Mr. Harris was my boss. The two of them chatted about the unexpected coincidence while I just stood there feeling numb and disgusted. All that kept going through my mind was, why did this have to happen? Why did he have to come into my mother's life? Was this really a coincidence, or did he have a different motive? After that day, every day was as normal as the one before. Mr. Harris didn't do anything strange, and there wasn't anything that made me worry. He and my mother got along very well. They grew closer and closer. Everything about their relationship seemed completely normal and natural. The only other time I saw Mom this happy was when she was with my dad, so I know Mr. Harris was having a good impact on her. Every day she smiled a lot and looked more and more radiant. Not too long later, Mr. Harris proposed and my mom accepted. They got married and he officially became my stepfather. Everything went fine and continued to be peaceful and happy. I began to have deep thoughts after there were no strange signs from Mr. Harris. Maybe I had overthought the whole thing and there was no problem to begin with. Seeing how happy they both were together made me let go of all the old thoughts I had about him. The most important thing was that my mother was happy. That's all that mattered to me. I accepted their relationship and accepted Mr. Harris as a part of our family. I felt like I had worried for nothing and had no one else to blame but myself for thinking poorly of him. At that time, I thought things would always stay like this, peaceful and happy. I didn't feel a bit of doubt and felt relieved that Mr. Harris was a good person because of how he cared for my mother and our family. I was just being too sensitive before, but I let all that go. I was all in the past. Every now and then, I would help my mom out at her beauty supply store. Whether an employee couldn't come in or they just need extra help in general, I would pitch in a few times every month. Even Mr. Harris helped out when he had free time. I really believed that he was a great husband to my mother and a great stepfather to me. But one day, something terrible happened that made me feel the complete opposite way. I was supposed to help my mom do inventory in the store one day, but I woke up feeling terrible. It was so bad that I couldn't even get out of bed. She reassured me that her and the staff would be fine and to stay home and rest. Mr. Harris even volunteered to stay home from work to take care of me. At first, I didn't feel the need to be worried. After all the time the three of us lived together happily, I thought he could be trusted. I dozed off and was glad not to feel the pain that I was in from being sick. Then, the unexpected happened. Mr. Harris came into the room and told me it was time to take my medicine. I hated taking pills, but I knew if I wanted to feel better, It was my only choice. There didn't seem to be anything suspicious about him giving me the medicine, but I was unaware that this was the beginning of his plan. Everything seemed normal. Nothing seemed odd at all. The medicine didn't take effect right away, so I lay there for a while. After about 30 minutes, everything began to change. Mr. Harris came back into the room with a strange look in his eyes. I tried to prop myself up, but I found that I could no longer move. I no longer had any strength, and the feeling of paralysis spread through my body like wildfire. I was in shock and panicked because I didn't know what was going to happen next. But as Mr. Harris came closer to me, all I could do was lie there. He may have walked over calmly, but the look on his face scared me and made me nervous. I struggled, trying to move, but had no success. I couldn't even lift a single finger. I was frightened by my helplessness, and that fear doubled when Mr. Harris leaned down next to me. His face was just a few inches from mine, and he gave me a creepy smile. Then he said, "I've been waiting forever for this moment." I couldn't believe what I had just heard. All my doubts and worries about him came flooding back into my head. It wasn't my imagination after all. It was my reality. He sat down next to me with a sinister look on his face. As I lay there, all I could do was listen to what he had to say. He began telling me what his plan was all along. Ever since I came to work at the media company, he had feelings for me and always wanted to be near me. He tried everything but noticed that I started keeping my distance from him. Since his attempts had failed, he knew he had to try things a different way. He began doing research on my personal life and found out about my mother, who was single and owned the beauty supply store. He decided to pursue her because he figured that was the only way to get close to me. When he came into the store to act like he was going to get a birthday gift for his sister, he hit it off with my mother and eventually gained her trust. Everything went easy and according to plan for him, and before I knew it, he became my stepfather. I couldn't believe that everything he did was so evilly planned. I thought my mother had real happiness, but it turns out it was all part of his disgusting plan to deceive her to get closer to me. After he finished explaining everything, he scooted closer to me. He had enjoyment written all over him as he watched me lie there helplessly. I tried my hardest to move but couldn't. My heart began beating faster, but everything else in my body was locked. Then Mr. Harris slid his hands all over me. He then did everything he wanted to do while I lay there paralyzed. Every moment seemed like forever, and I couldn't do anything but stare up at the ceiling and hope for it to end. But he wouldn't stop. I wanted to fight back so bad, but there was nothing I could do. The time just seemed to drag on for an eternity, like I was in a nightmare with no ending. The fear in me rose every second, and there wasn't anything I could do to stop it. When it was finally over, I lay there in disgust. Mr. Harris stood up and adjusted his clothes while I could do nothing but think about the terror I had just been through. My mind was filled with pain and anger. How could he do this to me? After I had done my best to think good of him, he went and betrayed my trust like that. He glanced at me one more time without a bit of remorse before he walked out of the room, leaving me with hurt and torment in my mind. I didn't know how I was going to go on when everything had just fallen apart in my life. A while later, the effects of the pills slowly began to wear off. Eventually, I finally had control of my body again. Even though I was dizzy and weak, I tried my best to stand up. I knew exactly what I had to do next. My eyes locked on the phone that was on the table. This was the only way that this nightmare would come to an end. I slowly walked to the table because my steps were unsteady. I picked up the phone and called 911. I took a deep breath and told the dispatcher everything that had just happened. The police arrived a couple of minutes later, but to me, it seemed like forever. When they entered, the house was no longer silent. All I could hear were voice and footsteps. And then finally, Mr. Harris was arrested. He didn't even resist. He just dropped his head, and then they handcuffed him. My mother returned shortly after he was arrested and saw that I was terrified by what had happened. She didn't really understand what had happened, so I explained everything to her, not holding anything back. My mother was